everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Oner podcast. It's the podcast where we break down and review films all in one big, long, unbroken take. I'm Austin Archer, and with me, as always, is my childhood next-door neighbor and lifelong best friend,
Cramer, England.
All righty. Okay, so we went and saw, from Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza, Warfare this week. It's in theaters right now from A24. It kind of feels like what happened here is Garland had some consultants when he was making Civil War with A24 that were military guys that were helping him to get his military sequences for Civil War down in a way that felt really realistic. And he forged a relationship with some of these guys, and one in particular, Ray Mendoza, had this story that he told him, and I think that Garland just went, that's a movie right there, let's just make that. And the two of them just collaborated on this film, and basically it's just a movie about this one operation that this guy went on with his platoon and in Iraq. And this movie for the most part is getting very good reviews. We are going to do
both sides.
And we're going to get a plot breakdown here, so there will be a spoiler warning here. We're going to just speak generally for a minute. I just want to say up top, again, I really recommend seeing this film in theaters if you haven't already. I thought this movie was fantastic. I thought it was just excellent.
It was extremely well made, and it did its job very, very well. For sure. And it's very, as we kind of talked about a little bit before, like it is very effective with an A. It will affect you in one way or the other. And it's just stayed with me because I saw it yesterday. I saw it last night. And I just keep thinking about it, just like how brutal it is.
There's a similar critique of this film that I see that I also saw when Civil War came out that I didn't agree with it with Civil War, and I don't agree with it here. And it's that both films are light on traditional character development. There's not both. Civil War is also a film that just sort of drops you right in the middle of a situation. And a lot of people felt like the movie could have been a lot better if we had gotten more context for who these characters are, how they relate to each other, how, what their personal politics are and their personal beliefs are, so we can kind of know what the stakes are for them. And I didn't necessarily, I disagree with it less in Civil War than I do here, but I still felt like with Civil War, Garland is a good enough visual storyteller that I can get a lot about a character off of a look or off off of a single line. And I felt like I didn't need to be spoon-fed as much with the characters in Civil War or in this. I felt like I can make inferences based off of actions they would take in certain scenarios. And I kind of like that Civil War and this film are less prescriptive in that way. They're not trying to, basically this movie in particular, Warfare, has a very atypical structure. And that's a thing that we talk a lot about on this show, but it's not a typical like 3-act structure where, you've got, it might have some things that are structurally there, but for the most part, similar to Tombstone that we talked about last week, because this is based on memory, it's just unfolding as it unfolded in the,
it really does. And the structure, like I wasn't paying too much attention, but it does hit certain things, but it's like art imitating life. Like I'm sure that's kind of how battles go anyway. Like and it really just focuses on this one battle, this one event that takes place. I think what you're talking about with I loved I don't know what to call it, but it's more like a slice of life, and it's not a slice of life, but like it's just taken, here's beginning and end. It's pretty much real time. Besides the very first part, it's real time. And this was like a true story based on Ryan Mendoza's experience, right? So and his platoon's experience. So I think that works really, really well. And I think people understand that better. Now, I have not seen I haven't seen Civil War.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest problem that Civil War has is, take it with a grain of salt from an outside perspective, is that it's a high concept it's a high concept idea
Mhm.
about something that has not happened.
Right.
And so I think people were expecting more spectacle, more more taking a stance and doing those things. So their expectations, I think, were that way. With this, it's a lot better because it's just this is what happened. Like we're just kind of we wanted to make a movie about how intense war is. So
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
it's a
that
little
I
bit
think
you get a little bit more of a slide for that.
yeah, definitely another big criticism with Civil War is that the people wanted Garland to take a more definitive political stance. They
Yeah.
wanted him to say something about the ideological political divide in America and have more of a firm stance.
Yeah.
Again, I believe it's in there. I believe
Yeah.
it's in the film, and I actually think it's not terribly subtle also, if you're actually paying attention, if you've watched that movie. Uh, this movie has another thing like it, where people kind of are saying now, like you said, this movie, you call it slice of life. I've heard people call this movie an experience, that it's
Yeah.
more of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a
That's
it's an
good.
immersive experience. It almost feels like a documentary or something, where they're just showing you, here are the events, here's what happened. But it
Yeah.
really feels like the reason why I think this is a good movie to see in theaters is it's a sensory experience.
Yeah.
It's a really immersive sensory experience.
Yeah.
Um, my brother told me he had to put earplugs in halfway through the movie because it was hitting him so hard, which
Yeah.
I get that a lot of people have talked about the sound mixing in this film. It is technically really, really well structured. And it hits hard the way that it should. But
Yeah.
yeah, going back to this idea of like character development lacking, because I've heard people say they go, I don't care about what's going on in this movie because I don't know who any of these people are. And for me personally, I just kind of feel like I don't if you can't get, and hey, to each their own. It's art is
Yeah.
That's why we have
Yeah.
our subjective score at the end of this show. But if you
Mhm.
can't get hooked into a story like this, knowing that it's someone's true life experience, if there's no character in here that you can project yourself onto, whether it's the family whose home is being invaded,
Yeah.
or the interpreters who are working for these guys against their will, or the new guy, or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if there's no one in here that you can kind of latch into and say, okay, that's my point of reference, or
Yeah.
just knowing that like this is the world you live in, this is the state of modern warfare, this is what
Yeah.
it looks like currently in Gaza, this is what warfare looks like, is overhead aerial shots from drones of
Mhm.
heat signatures from bodies and things like that. If you can't on some level latch into that without some kind of prescriptive traditional character development, where they're like, and now we're going to show this guy FaceTiming with his girlfriend
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
home, and she's going
Yeah.
to hold up like the sonogram of their newborn baby that's on the way. If
Yeah.
you I just to me I'm like, I don't need all that
No.
to latch into what this movie is offering personally.
No, and I totally agree, and I think honestly, like, there's the smaller platoon, right? That one, we get to know pretty much every one of those characters,
Yeah.
and it is very subtle, but it says a ton when you know what you're looking for, right? Like, so the sniper, and I don't know,
Mhm.
I don't remember all their names, and again, like you said, teach their own. Like, if you didn't like it, I understand, but like I got who these characters were pretty quickly.
Mhm.
Like the sniper, um, let me see if I can find his name. He's Cosmo Jarvis is the
Right.
actor, and he's Elliot is his name in the movie.
Yeah.
You got who he was like pretty quickly. He's looking through a sniper, and then he's with the other sniper. The other sniper has a chance to take a shot, but he doesn't.
Mhm.
Right, and then over the radio, someone says "weak,"
Yeah.
like kind of
Uh-huh.
like, and then the other Elliot comes over and he looks at him. He's like, "What happened?" He's like, "Oh, I couldn't take the shot." And he's like, "Weak."
Yeah.
Right? It's just like he's that guy. Like he's gonna kid around with everybody. Also, when he gets off of the like mattress thing, he looks over at Ray, the character who's playing Ray Mendoza, and he just stares at him, just kind of like gives him a
Yeah.
look. And I was like, I know that guy.
Oh,
Like I know that guy.
no, totally. There are moments with each one of these characters. This is what I mean when I think that
Yeah.
Garland is a good enough
Oh yeah.
visual storyteller. I also think that like this one thing that I think this movie really did right, because it sort of reminds me of that film that Clint Eastwood made about the Marines who
Yeah, yeah,
took
yeah, yeah.
over the train that was being hijacked by terrorists. You know what I'm talking about? And the act
Oh,
he had the actual guy. I'm not talking about American Sniper. I'm talking
right.
about
Yes,
the
yes, yes.
film that was there was a train that was being taken over by terrorists, and these Marines jumped into action. These Marines that were like on vacation, and he had the actual guys play themselves in the
That's
film.
right. Yep.
And so it's similar to that in that he's trying to draw on the real life experience of these guys. Or there was like a Navy SEAL movie that came out, I want to say like 10 years ago, that did a similar thing where it used the actual guys
Yes.
and they
I
played
remember that one.
themselves. And I think it's smart that Garland uses a cast of world-class actors in this movie.
Yes. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
instead, because we got Will Poulter, who we just talked about
yeah.
um in Death of a
Death of a
Unicorn,
Unicorn. Yeah,
and he's great here. And
yeah,
we've got Cosmo Jarvis, who is fantastic in this movie. We've got Joseph Quinn, who does a really nice job. We've got a really a really well-rounded cast of actors who all
yeah,
have moments with just like a look or a line, or they all get these little beats where I get locked into, okay, I know who this guy is. I know who this guy is,
yep,
and I
yep,
don't need much else.
yep.
And I think that I feel the same way about the movie Civil War. And also, as we'll get into the plot breakdown, I'm going to talk about the fact that like I do believe that there are political, or like I guess you
Yeah,
call it a personal morality
yeah,
commentary on the ethics of warfare and the morals of warfare. I think is in here. I think there is commentary being made here. It's just not necessarily beating you over the head with it, and it
yeah,
is open enough that somebody could go watch this movie and think, "Oh, this is a rah-rah American propaganda film
yeah,
about a very unpopular war," and
yeah,
it's showing us, but I don't think it is that. And, I
yeah, I
think we
agree.
should just get into our plot breakdown here for this film because it's a pretty straightforward movie.
Yeah,
And so this is a spoiler alert. We are going to be talking plot details of Warfare. Again, go see this movie in the theaters if you have not already. But yeah, I really like the way that this movie opens.
yeah,
It's our one kind of moment to be with these guys before
yeah, yeah,
the
you really get a sense that they are, I mean, they're in a war, they're watching a music video, and they have a moment where you kinda get to, like, see that they're all kind of friends, at least in one way or another. They're kind of, like, just joking around, right? And they're all excited, so it gives us that moment to be like, "Oh, okay, this is really interesting," and kinda latch onto them.
Yeah, and structurally, this feels like a prologue kind of
Mhm,
because
mhm.
it's like this is like
Yeah, there's
before, like I feel like the real first shot of the film is the next shot after
yeah,
this. So we have this little prologue, which is the boys are all in a tent watching a music video, and what we learn later is this is kind of like almost like a hype up ritual. Like they know they're
yeah,
going out on a
yeah,
dangerous mission, and before they go out, they're all gonna kind of do a little party, which
yeah.
I feel like from everybody that I know who's ever done a tour in the Middle East, they talk about stuff like this, about the moments where
Mm,
they would try to like where
yeah,
they'd watch sports together, or they'd watch
yeah,
YouTube, and because this is warfare in the modern era with the internet and stuff. So they're watching this music video and they're all like, dancing together and rocking and rolling.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
again, character, the one person who's sort of who's in the back, who's not getting as he's dancing, but he's not getting as into it, is Will
Will
Poulter's
Poulter,
character.
yep, mhm,
And we don't know yet, but Will Poulter is the commanding officer of this
yeah,
platoon. He's the guy in charge. So
yep,
while he's like, I'm glad we're all, having a good time and being buds, he also knows it's my job to make sure everybody gets home safe.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
you can see from the jump that he takes his responsibility a little more seriously,
yeah,
and just out of necessity. It's like I've got to make sure at least one of us
yeah.
is staying, you
Yeah,
know,
kinda level-headed.
level.
But
Yeah,
he is having fun, like, he's
yeah,
smiling and he's, letting them be who they are.
yeah.
And then, like, it's pretty crazy because it's like, they're all jumping and dancing, and then it just cuts. And
And
it's
this to me is like the first shot of the movie.
yeah,
This is
oh,
like,
yeah, totally, totally.
because it's also it's bookended at the end of the film, but it's
Yeah,
just like I love this shot.
yeah,
I was like, I love stuff like this. Like it's
yeah,
just a shot of this street in a town, in a
yeah,
random town in Iraq, in the middle of the night. and it's dead. There's no noise. You can't hear anything. And slowly the frame just starts getting filled on both sides by these Navy SEALs that are just sort of
Yeah.
slowly walking in,
Yeah.
quietly through this town. And it's like immediately the tension is on because
Yeah.
immediately you're just like, okay, I don't know where we are and I don't know what we're doing. And that's also a big part of this movie too, is that the movie is not like, here's the stakes of, we never even find out what the mission even is,
No.
you know?
Never
Most
know.
likely because the details of it are probably classified. And so
Most
it's
likely,
just
yeah.
like, we can't tell you what we were there doing. But
Yeah.
also, I think that that's part of when I talk about how I think that there is some kind of commentary being made in
Yeah.
this film. It's like, it's not important what they're there doing. Like, it does,
Yeah.
these young men are tools. They're
Right.
instruments of the state. They are just
Yeah.
told to go somewhere and they go there.
Yeah.
And yeah, but
Yeah. I think you're right. I think you could definitely see it as something like that. And I think this they find a house and they basically say, okay, this is the house that we're going to go to. We're going to take it over. They go in quietly. They get the person on the first floor, and they're like, just they have two Iraqi soldiers with them, or I don't know if they're Iraqi, who they're helping them.
Arab guys that speak the
Yes,
language of the natives and
yes,
they're translators, which was very
yes.
common for,
Yeah.
platoons would go around with
Oh yeah.
translators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those two guys are telling him like, just be calm, be calm. We're just, and they get them, and then they're like, they try to go upstairs, but there's a wall, and so they have to break down the wall. And after that, I was actually, because I was thinking a lot about the structure as well, and I feel like this might even be the inciting incident
Sure.
when they break down the wall, because
Because that
that's
gives away their position.
yes, that's what
Yeah.
they say. They're like that gave away. Anyway, they break down. It's like a cinder block wall that is another apartment. So
Mhm.
they break it down, and the father of the area gets his wife and his two daughters, and just they basically take over that part. And then the next the next 20-25 minutes, nothing happens. And
Yeah, but
I
it's
gotta say, I mean, nothing happens in the sense that there's no action,
yeah.
there's tension building, but I loved this. I love that they did
Yeah.
that.
Even I wanna go even to a little quick beat, in this opening sequence before they go into the house,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
this is so, like, like, this movie's constantly reminding us that even though these are highly trained individuals who have been, uh,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
they're still kids, and
Yeah.
that's that prologue of them, like, dancing to the music video, but it's like they're walking down the street, and it's this very serious, very tense kind of
Yeah.
they're all in formation, but then these
Yeah.
2 guys look at each other from across the street, and they start doing, like they're, like, humping at each other, like,
Yeah.
they're, like, doing little, like,
They're
humping
d
dances,
Yeah.
and it's like, you're
That was
reminded,
funny.
like, "Oh, yeah, these guys are like this is like me. This is like me and my friends
Yeah.
if we and, and
Yeah.
they're trying to find moments to just and it's the way that soldiers will try to find moments to sort of normalize the
Yes.
situation that they're in. They're
Right.
not gonna, give away the position and make a bunch of noise, but they will goof around. And
Yep.
it's kinda like that moment you talked about of Cosmo Jarvis standing up and looking at the guy and being like,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
and just sort of messing with people.
Yeah.
And yeah, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of sort of like, you know, like, kind of like
Personality traits that they bring out that kinda it gives them character.
yeah.
And I mean, though, that part really gave, because I think one of them was Cosmo Jarvis. I think he was the one that started. But anyway,
Yeah, probably.
you get
And
an
that
idea of who he is.
yeah. But yeah, so I think you're right that that them having to break down this cinder block because it's like 2 apartments
Yeah.
that are on top of each other
Yeah.
and they're separated by a cinder block wall and they break down the wall with a sledgehammer, which is also an important prop that comes
Yes.
back up later that my brother asked me a question about it. Now, when we get to that, I'll ask you
Oh,
about
okay.
it. But
Great.
uh I also like w- w- in this movie and in the movie American Sniper, I feel like they both did a really good job of without I mean, maybe you could argue that the movie should spend more time on these families, but I feel like the
Yeah.
disposability of Arab life and of
Yes.
Arab people that it's
Yeah.
just sort of like, "Hey, you're kind of just in our way. You're just sort
Yeah.
of in we're gonna come in and take over your house."
Yeah.
And the rationale for a lot of this stuff was these people knew they were in an active war zone where a war was
Yeah.
actively taking place. They were given warnings, daily that, like, "You should evacuate, you should leave because there are, Taliban factions in your town, and there will be American military showing up and
Yeah.
doing and like if you don't want to be a part of that, you can leave. But again, it's so much easier said than done to just tell, like,
Yeah.
when you try to imagine it being your neighborhood, that all of
Yeah.
a sudden people roll through with loudspeakers just going, "Hey, get out of here. We're gonna come in with the," and it's like,
Yeah.
not everyone has the ability to just uproot their entire life and take
Yeah.
off. And so I have so much empathy for these
Yeah.
people who are sleeping in the middle of the night, and it's so terrifying the way that they just get woken up in the middle of the night with guys with guns, and those guys
Yeah.
are going, "It's okay, calm down, don't
Yeah.
yell,
Yeah.
don't scream," and the translators are going, don't scream, don't
Yeah.
yell,"
Yeah.
and they're like, "Okay, okay, so," but it's like,
Yeah.
how utterly terrifying. And then
Yeah.
the people on the upstairs apartment, they wake up to, their wall getting broken down by a sledgehammer, and
Yeah.
it's like, it's just so the you know, the kind of the inhumanity, the disposability of the Arab characters, and we see more of that later on in the plot, but immediately kind of the way that the American military is sort of conditioned and trained to just be like, walk right over these people. Like, they are
Yeah.
in your way,
Yeah.
they're an obstacle in the way of completing the mission. If they are jeopardizing the mission, you have the authority to kill them. If they're
Right.
like, like that's we
Yeah.
have the
Yeah.
and I just it it is and yeah, again, I think that you can make an argument that maybe the movie should spend more time with those characters, but I also think that the fact that it doesn't, it's like, that's also in and of
Yeah.
itself a
Yeah.
statement, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I could see that. And I think that's a different movie if you focus on the Arab family, which could
Mhm.
be very interesting. But
Yeah.
this movie is not. It's saying it without saying it, right? It
Mhm.
gives them enough time to see that, like, because I thought that too. Like, what if somebody came into my house and just took it over like they did? Like, that would be a horrible, horrible thing.
So
So
scary.
it was there. Like, it was there enough for me and obviously you, and I'm sure a lot of other people, to kind of empathize with their situation.
Well, and that's why I have a hard time just seeing this movie as, like, a straight up propaganda, "Rah, rah, go America"
No,
movie, 'cause I'm
yeah,
just like,
no,
I don't
no,
see, even though I can empathize with a lot of our main characters, our American soldiers,
yeah,
I also I I think what I'm more critical of, and I actually think I wouldn't be surprised if Ray Mendoza is critical of this, is just the
yeah,
American war apparatus and the way that it utilizes young men as just tools of its agenda, just blunt force
mhm,
instruments of its agenda. And I feel like Ray Mendoza, I don't know the man's personal politics, but I would not be surprised if his view of it later in life is, a
yeah. It's very possible. Yeah.
little more critical, or,
Oh, yeah, totally.
yeah.
But
But
so,
yeah, you're
yes,
right. So then we go into the next day, and
yeah,
basically what we've got is on the upstairs level, the upper deck of this this apartment building, we've got a sniper they've made a little hole in the wall, and they're watching this building, and they're all just sort of on the upper deck, kind of in different positions. They're doing radio comms with drones that are flying overhead, and with another
mhm,
platoon that's in another location.
yeah,
And it's just sort of like the calm before the storm. And you can
yep,
feel that tension sitting in the audience, that it's like, well, this is not going to last. Like, this is going
yeah,
to, yeah.
yeah. It lasts a long time. Which, again, I really liked that, because I felt like what they were saying with that is, like, there's a lot of just, I mean, and I don't know. I've never been in war. I don't have anyone really close to me that has been in war, but a lot of it is just kind of sitting around waiting, right?
Mhm.
And so you have this kind of, like, it starts out with this tension of taking over this house, and then it's just like dull, and it feels like it takes a long time. But I'm sure that that is exactly what it's like. When you're in a war zone, you just gotta do what you're told and wait till something happens.
Yeah. You
Um,
move to a position and you sit there and you wait,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. And that's
and
and that's just kind of like everybody's just kind of waiting around, and they are getting, but the tension is always rising. Every time it's just a little bit more, just a little bit more, right? Like
yeah,
the
we're mostly following the building tension through the eyes of the scope of the sniper, because
yes.
we're seeing more and more things happen at this location that look like maybe something's about to go down, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
they see, somebody kind of looks over in their direction, and they're kind of, someone's looking out the window, and they're like, I wonder if people are on top of the roof, like they're all close together. So they're kind of worried about that. And then another guy kind of like peeks through a window and is looking directly at the hole that they have, and like so everything kind of like slowly escalates. And then
Well, and like you said, Elliot, who's the guy who's been on the rifle, he kind of sees that he's out of dip,
yeah, yeah,
tobacco. So he asks his friend, he goes, "Hey, can you take over the rifle for a little bit? I got to stand up and stretch." Which again,
yeah,
this is these things like these snipers would sometimes be sitting there for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours at a time,
yeah, yeah.
not moving on their stomach, holding
Mhm.
their position up against a rifle. And he gets this guy to take over for him. And it's, I think the sort of situation that's like you said, these guys roll up in a car and one guy gets out and he is holding what looks like an RPG, maybe like
Yeah,
a,
or an
a
assault rifle, some sort
yeah,
of
he's
gun
got a
or
weapon.
weapon. Yeah.
And the guy that's on the gun has an opportunity to take a shot, doesn't take it. And like you said, Elliot says weak, and the guys over the radio say weak. But the question is like, if Elliot had been there, would he have taken the shot? And then the
Yeah.
question is also like, is that better for them?
Yeah.
Would it have been better if he had taken the shot from a distance? Would they have had a better chance at defending their position if they had been the ones to initiate contact?
Right.
And who knows? You
Yeah.
know,
And I think you're totally right. The other thing that I thought was very interesting too is it gave a lot of character to the soldier who did not take the shot.
hmm
I mean, he was I can't remember what his name was, but he was always like really scared. He wasn't like a coward. He did what he was supposed to, but he was hesitant. And through the whole thing, he's like he's trying to do everything he can, but he's obviously it's a very scary moment. So that, he's a hesitant person. It tells you a lot about him as a character. At least I felt like immediately I was like, okay, he's a little scared. So
Yeah, well, and I you kinda go, "What would I do in that
yeah,
position?"
exactly.
You're
Yeah,
sitting there watching. "Oh, that guy's got a gun." Are you just supposed to just go? Is it just
yeah,
do you have
yeah,
to have that instinct of, and, they use all of this military terminology throughout it. They say MAMs at one point, which is
yeah.
military aged males, and
Mhm.
or they, I think they might even say ma'ams, like,
They
I
do, yeah,
yeah,
ma'ams, yeah.
um, but, like, uh yeah, basically what happens is as more and more guys start showing up at this location that they're looking at, all of a sudden the guys at this building start making an announcement in the street, and they're using loudspeakers to yell something into the street, and
Yeah,
you can kind of hear people yelling, and the translators come up and go, "Hey, it's not good." And they go, "What?" They go, "They're telling everyone to get inside their houses because they're about to do a jihad."
yeah,
And they're like, so they're telling everyone to they're like, so they're probably coming over here.
yeah,
And so those guys are like, "All right, cool. We are breaking out and we are going to roll out of this location." But so they start
yeah,
calling in um backup to come pick them up from where they are so that they can get out of the building. And as they're starting to sort of get their stuff together, and this moment, I mean, this was, I don't know about you, but like me in the theater when this happened, because they've got it. Elliot's back on the gun. He's back on the
yeah,
sniper
yeah,
rifle. He's looking out this hole, and all of a sudden, a grenade just casually gets lobbed
yeah,
into the little hole that he's looking through. And I in the theater went, "Oh no!" And it just is like it's like that. It's just
yeah,
like, oh, and he
yeah,
just kind of goes, "Oh." And and he's trying to like get up off the mattress that he's on, and it's so fast. This grenade goes
yeah,
off, and pretty much from this moment to the end of the film,
yes.
the foot is on the gas. It's
Yep, it does
just
not let up.
yeah, it's
And
like
it
this
was it
yeah,
yeah, it was crazy. This scene, so I went, it was the theater was packed.
yeah.
I saw it on a Tuesday, so the theater was packed, and it was mostly young men, and I could almost kind of feel people getting restless, like when's gonna something gonna happen, right? And when that hit, everybody stopped, and it just everybody was totally focused the entire time. It was the same thing, like once the grenade went through, everybody was like, "Oh," you could hear it that everybody
I
was
even
very.
heard one reviewer refer to it as a jump scare, and I was like, "It
Oh
kind
yeah,
of
I could see
was."
that. Yeah,
It kind of was, like, because you 'cause you're just sort of lulled into this state of like, "All right, what's," and then when
yeah.
that grenade comes through, it's just like, "Oh, oh no."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's,
exactly. So, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
And the grenade goes off, and it's not it wasn't a big explosion. Like it injures Elliot, but not a ton, just enough that they want to get him out. He's got like
Yeah, his
something on his
arm's
arm.
bleeding. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, but there were two other soldiers in the room, and they were fine. I think it just gets them,
Rattles them for
totally,
sure,
totally.
Yeah.
And so then they start getting, and this is something that I really liked as well. And we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but everything seems very, very to the procedure. Like they're
Mhm.
using military language, they're following the book. It's not like it's heightened reality, but it's not like over the top, right? Like it is very much like what they would do in a situation like this, like what SEALs would do in this situation.
Yep.
And there was also a movie called Greyhound with Tom Hanks. It was about submarines they're crossing in
Yeah.
World War II, and I felt it was very similar because they did the same thing. They weren't going for like over the top drama. They would follow the procedures that the Navy actually did. And I really liked it because it made it feel more realistic, and it made it, because they're like, hey, we got to get out of here, we have somebody injured, and they're like, well, we're 5 minutes away. And it's like, can they not get here sooner? Like in a movie, it just would just
Yeah,
cut,
you have
and
to
then you'd
just
go there.
take what it's like. We have to take whatever time window we're given. But
Yeah.
also, yeah, like, that's one thing I was gonna say at the beginning of the episode that I forgot to say is like the war epic is you know, the last A24 movie we covered, Death of a Unicorn, we were talking about how A24 is one of the studios that is still championing original films, original
Yes.
IP.
Yeah.
And this is, the war epic is a well-worn genre.
Yes.
There
Yes.
are several made every year.
Uh-huh.
Like it's rare to see a year go by without at least one big war movie coming out from one of the major studios or somebody
Yeah.
making some kind of war epic, if not several. And it's usually a pretty successful genre. But
Yeah.
I think one of the things I really liked about this movie is it managed to make a well-worn genre feel uh new in a way.
Yeah.
It felt like it was doing something novel with it, something that, and
Yeah.
all it was really doing is just saying, instead of trying to, make a movie out of this, let's
Yeah.
just put you let's just make it the title is just warfare. We're
Yeah.
just going to
Yeah.
give you the experience, the visceral sensory experience
Yeah.
of, because we're really in one location for most of the
Yeah.
movie.
Oh yeah.
We, the audience, don't ever really leave
No.
this apartment building. And
No.
that's also really interesting to be like, you're going to be pinned down in this one location for most
Yeah.
of the film.
Yeah.
And
It
yeah.
pretty much is a chamber piece. And
Mhm.
um yeah, I agree. This movie, in many ways, this movie felt a lot like Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
But mainly just the first part of Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
Saving Private Ryan is definitely, like, I love that movie. It changed war movies, this is also, I think, very influenced by that movie in some ways. But the in Saving Private Ryan, the first, 30, 45 minutes on Omaha Beach and storming in Normandy, right?
Mhm.
It's very real. They don't hold back. It's horrible. It's scary. It's really visceral, right? And this movie is basically that.
Mhm.
It's like, it just makes you think, like, oh, it gives you an appreciation. Saving Private Ryan really gave. I mean, that came out when we were really young, but I was like, oh my gosh, like that was crazy. Like, how horrible would that be, right? It gives you that
Yeah.
sense of like, this is a horrible situation. And this movie, Warfare, it gave me that same feeling. Like, oh my gosh, this is like so crazy because it feels so real.
Well, and because it's real people sharing their
Yeah,
real life experiences, like
yeah,
you're watching people experience lifelong trauma in real time. And you
exactly.
can see it happening to them, not just physically,
Yeah.
but psychologically.
Yes.
You can see their like brain chemistry changing in real
Yep.
time.
Yep.
There's a new guy that, and again, like this movie in our 25-minute, period of like the lull, the calm before the
Mhm.
storm, before
Yeah.
that grenade goes through, we see Joseph Quinn and he's doing push-ups. We don't know yet that he's like the medic. We find that out later, but he's sort of in one room doing push-ups and he's just trying to keep himself primed. We see that Will Poulter is kind of at the command, we're like, okay, so Will Poulter must be in charge of everything.
Mhm.
We see what's his name? Gandolfini's son, James Gandolfini's son is the
Oh,
guy that's
yeah,
on the
yeah, yeah.
he's on the radio, and so he's our like comms guy. We see Mendoza, who's also helping out with the comms. We see the sniper team, and then we see this one guy who's kind of wandering around, and he's sort of like asking everybody like, "How you guys doing? How you guys?" You
Yeah,
know, and
yeah,
then and what somebody goes, "New guy energy," you
yeah,
know, and you can
yeah,
tell that like he just sort of doesn't really know where he should be, and
yeah,
and it's maybe one of his first tours, and that guy too. Like when we follow him once the grenade comes in and once bullets are flying and we see, you know, when we get a good look at that guy's face, we see like, oh,
yeah.
this guy is being forever changed. And that's another thing is that Cosmo Jarvis, after that grenade goes off, the way that his character responds to trauma, where he's not
Mhm.
really, he doesn't really elevate. He kind of just walks out and like puts his arms up and he's like, "Hey, I need to
Yeah,
get checked for blood," you know?
yeah,
And they're like, "You all right?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm all right." You know, he's just
yeah,
like, "I just," you know, but he's very, he just sort of responds to it like, ah, just, ooh, got,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
got my, but like,
Well, and he's like, "I gotta get my stuff." Like, "Go get my stuff, and
yeah.
we'll get out of here."
And he
Yeah,
tells the new guy, he's like, "Hey, get in there, get my stuff," you know?
yeah,
And he just and yeah. But also that's a big thing in this movie too, that we get to learn so much about the American military's procedures of
yeah,
you don't leave gear
yeah,
behind. And it's a big deal in this movie that they do not abandon their gear. That
yeah,
like they can't just go, "Hey, we need to get out of this room." They need to make sure that everything is put away, so they need to put
yeah,
away all their computers and all of their, they can't just leave the stuff out and say,
yeah,
let's get the hell out of here," which is what a rational person would do. A rational person
yeah,
would do, say,
yeah,
"Let's get to cover as quickly as possible." They've got to put everything away first, make sure they've cleared all the rooms of all of their gear,
yep,
make sure they haven't left any gear out, and then they can go downstairs. And that's sort of the big thing. That's the order that Will Poulter gives is, let's collect everything
yeah,
and let's go down to the lower deck because the upper
yep,
deck is compromised,
yep,
because we've got people on the roof and we've got guys on the balcony. So they've got to like collapse the upper deck and get downstairs.
yeah,
And the last thing that they do, and we've seen this teased earlier. Earlier, it showed there was a shot of like the railing outside, and the railing had all these claymores on it.
mhm,
Claymores, if you don't know, they're the kind of things that say on the front of them, they say like front toward enemy, you know, and it's like it's basically just like a mortar, like artillery, like it's a
yeah,
bomb that you know, it's like a plastic explosive type of
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And they have those all over the outside railings of the upper deck of this building that they're in. And the last thing they do before going down is they, or I think they go down and then they set off all the claymores on the upper
I
deck
think
just
you're right, yeah,
so that if there's anybody up on, and this, you can immediately see again, like talking about how we see the trauma in real time. You can see that Will Poulter's character is really rocked by the force of these claymores.
yeah,
That and again, it's like I don't know if you've ever, I don't know if, how much shooting you've done, but it's amazing how much force guns actually make.
yeah,
In movies, we just see people shooting shotguns and shooting gun, but like the reason why this movie's so loud is to try to give you that sensory
yeah,
experience of, there's a reason why people get concussions from the
right,
force of this kind of artillery. And what
right,
you can see with Will Poulter's character is like it looks like he gets a concussion from the claymores.
yeah, he's
And
pretty out of it after yeah,
yeah, and he hasn't been shot. It's not like he's just like his brain gets rattled by the force of being in the middle of several explosions that are all going off simultaneously.
yeah,
And it's kind of amazing that this doesn't happen to more people, that more soldiers don't just go, "Oh, I can't function right now because I'm
yeah,
concussed." Like
yeah,
like
yeah,
a bomb just went off next to my
yeah,
head. You know,
yeah,
whether any of the shrapnel hit me or not, the force of it, the seismic force of it
yeah, yeah.
smacked me in the skull, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I actually really like that, and Will Poulter played it really well because he is trying to continue to lead everybody, and he's having trouble speaking.
Yeah,
Like, it sounds like something happened, and but he's trying to get everybody to go and everybody do what they're supposed to. Like, finally, the tank comes in,
yeah,
and they get all in a line, and they all go outside. The
but
first 2 people are
this is another moment, yeah, like this the
yeah,
way that they do this, that, like,
yeah,
they tell their interpreters, "You guys are gonna go first and
yep.
kind of make sure it's all clear, and then we're gonna come out in a line behind you," and the interpreters are like, "What?"
Yeah, they
They're
don't
like,
wanna do it. Yeah.
yeah, because 'cause they're like, What are you talking about? Like, you know, I don't wanna go out there."
Yeah.
And they're just like, "You're gonna do it. You're gonna
Yeah.
go out," you know? And this moment like kind of broke my heart because the interpreters go out into the
Yeah.
street, and then the new guy starts to go out, and I think it's
Yeah.
Elliot or someone grabs him and goes,
I
hold on, wait.
I think it's Joseph Quinn. I thought it
Joseph,
was him,
yeah,
but
maybe
I
Joseph
can't remember. Yeah.
grabs him and goes, wait, like let the
Yeah.
interpreters go out first. And basically, what they are trained to do in this moment is say, those guys are expendable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, this whole thing of like the gear being really important, that like you can't leave gear behind. I kept feeling like there was this metaphor of United States soldiers are also seen as gear to the
Yeah.
military, that they are
Yeah.
seen as like indispensable. Like we have invested so much money and time into training you that we do not want to lose you. You're a very valuable, expensive asset to the
Mhm.
United States military. These interpreters are guys that we haven't spent nearly as much money and resources training. So
Yeah.
they're more expendable than you are.
Yeah.
And everything is, it kind of comes down to like the brass tacks and like the business of war. But
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It, that's what they do. They send them out,
yeah,
and I definitely. I mean, it was a really well crafted scene.
yeah,
They go out, and then they're like, okay, now we can go. They go out, and they get the door opens on the tank, and they get to the tank because they say, okay, we're gonna put Elliot in the tank, and then we're all coming back inside. That
hmm,
was the plan. That's what they were gonna do. They all get out to the tank. Once they get to the tank, an IED explodes,
yeah,
and it is huge.
yeah.
Like, I mean, it all the dust, like
This
it
was
was.
another huge jump scare for me. This was another
Yes,
like I didn't
yes,
see this coming, and I
yeah.
was rattled in my seat from this. Yeah.
Yeah, and it really is like, I mean, it's a big, and I mean, it looks very well shot. It looks really cool, and it's also very well edited in this scene, just because it goes off. You could ultimately say that this is now we're in Act Two. Like,
Sure.
this is pretty much like this is now they have to deal with this, and this is what they're gonna
Because
have
up
to
until this
survive.
point, the worst thing was Elliot had a cut arm, and
Exactly.
they got all their gear out of the house.
Yep.
Their backup had shown up, and they were going to get in these things and get out of there.
Yeah.
And but now this IED goes off,
Yeah.
and
And
now I
this
mean,
yeah, this is where it gets a little bit more. This is probably the only part of the movie that I felt like was a little more. They took a little more creative license,
sure.
but it's not much. But all it is just you can't really hear. It's all like it's kind of like through a it's a
Which
sound. It
we've
sounds like that.
this is kind of a trope. We've seen
It
this
is,
in
yes,
war movies that when bombs go off, we go to the ringing of the
yeah,
ears and the
yep. Which it's
yeah.
a trope for a reason because I'm sure that's what it's probably like.
Again, yeah, like
Very
this movie,
disoriented.
the sound mix of this movie is trying to give you the sensory experience. And so
Exactly.
part of that is after this IED goes off, like we're not going to hear for a little bit, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, and so everybody kind of starts waking up, but Joseph Quinn is, I think he's the first one to really wake up, and he looks over, and one of the interpreters is blown in half,
Yeah.
and you can just see the upper half of his body, which is very it is very
Yeah.
disturbing.
It's very grisly.
Yes, and this movie is very graphic. It's very graphic, but it's
Mhm.
very realistically graphic. So
Mhm.
he's kind of like, oh, like he doesn't really know what's going on, and he looks over, and then he looks down at his legs, and his legs are just one of them. It's not really going the wrong way, but it doesn't look like it should
We
be
can't
that way.
fully see everything
No,
that's wrong with his legs yet, but we can tell his
it's
legs.
bad.
And really what sells this is his reaction, because
Oh my gosh.
he's the medic. We've learned at this point. He's our guy that's sort of checking people and but he just, as he looks at his legs, he just slowly starts saying, "Oh my God. Oh my God."
Yeah,
And it's like, and you
yeah,
realize he knows, uh-oh. And it's kind of that, like he's in shock at first of like,
yep,
"Oh, I think I just lost my legs. I think,
yeah, yeah.
and but
And
it's yeah.
from this point on, I mean, he screams. All he's doing, he screams really, really loud, and he is screaming the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Like
This is
I'm
there's probably 40 minutes left in the film, and
yeah,
Joseph Quinn does not stop screaming for the rest of the
no.
movie.
And he is like, I felt like I was like, wow, that is really good performance because I mean, that's gotta be hard. I mean, it was days and days and days of him just having to scream.
Mhm.
That is like a really hard thing to do. And I could see that he is very much in pain. So Joseph Quinn does an amazing job in just making you feel like this is like the worst pain ever, which it probably was.
Mhm.
But he's the one who wakes up. They get him back inside. I think it's Will Poulter gets him back inside, and it
Yep.
just sounds like a horrible, miserable experience because he doesn't want to
Yeah,
move.
as he's dragging him, and this is kind of when we first get the first idea of like, oh, this is maybe worse than just like broken bones, because as
Yeah,
he's dragging him, we can see the trail of blood underneath his
yeah,
legs. So it's like, oh, if the legs are bleeding that much,
yeah,
then it's worse than just maybe a compound fracture or
yeah.
something.
Oh yeah.
It might be like big giant shrapnel wounds in his
Oh
legs.
yeah. Well,
And
yeah, and it's you can tell it's really bad.
yeah,
And then Ray, he gets up and he is like he's really, he kind of comes to as well at this point. And then he sees Elliot. Elliot is just on the ground. He's not responding. He's
he
not
looks
really
dead.
like I thought he was dead.
I thought he was dead for sure.
I was like, he
Yeah,
is dead. And like,
yeah,
you should just leave him because he's dead.
yep.
But they didn't leave him. He grabs him and he pulls him back inside, and his leg gets caught on the corner.
Mhm.
And then he tells the new guy to come and help him. They get him inside, and I was like, he's dead. What are you guys doing? But the other Gandolfini, he is working on him.
Mhm.
He's getting tourniquets around his legs because his legs are torn up too. They look pretty much the same as
Yeah,
Joseph Quinn's.
Gandolfini cuts open his pants, and we basically see that his legs are just
Oh,
they're
there.
just they're just yeah,
Just
it's
cuts, deep
really
gashes, just really,
yeah,
really graphic.
it's pretty grisly stuff, and
Yeah.
again, this is all based off of what
Yeah,
these men experience and what they remember seeing, and,
yeah, and
yeah.
it never felt like it was exploiting this. Like, it felt okay, this is what they see, it just seemed like this is what happens, and this is what they have to deal with, and
Yeah.
this is what they have to see.
Yeah, and while they're
So
working on Elliot, we're still sitting here kinda going like, "Is he alive or not? Is
yeah,
he?" And ho honestly, I thought both him and Joseph Quinn, I was like, even though they're alive right now,
yeah,
they're not going to live. My and this is sort of from my knowledge of, like, war films, that it's just
yeah,
sort of like,
yeah,
if you're bleeding that bad, if you're
yeah,
if let's say that your whatever the artery your femoral artery
yeah,
is severed from shrapnel, like, it's only a matter of time before you can't
yeah,
bleed like, the amount of blood that's coming out of them, I'm just going, "Well, then you're dead, right?" Like, you like,
yeah, yeah,
there's no
that's
point. What's the point of, of stuffing and, that's another thing is, like, at one point, Ray Mendoza is stuffing gauze
oh,
into Joseph Quinn's leg, and Joseph Quinn is just
well,
screaming, going, "No, don't,"
yeah,
like
don't touch me,
but it's
yeah,
like, I have to, like,
yeah,
and he at one point, he tries to put a tourniquet on, Joseph Quinn's leg,
yeah,
but he can't with his gloves, he can't get
yeah.
the
Well, and he's
fabric
shaking so
yeah,
bad. He's
and he
shaking,
can't
he
get the
can't get it.
fabric through the buckle of the
Yeah.
belt, so he just says, "I'm just gonna kneel on your leg."
Well, he says, yeah, he's like,
Yeah,
there's another way, but you're gonna feel it." And he just
mhm,
kneels down, and
yeah.
Joseph Quinn yells again. I mean, because obviously it's like,
Yeah. Will
oh,
Poulter comes over and goes like, "Okay, hold," because he also kinda sees again, talking about, like, the trauma that's happening in real
yeah,
time, because we can see Mendoza start to dissociate from the situation. In
yes,
order to do what he has to do, he's sort
yeah,
of just staring off into the middle distance,
yep,
and Poulter sees this and kind of pulls himself out of his concussed days and goes
yeah.
over and, like, pushes him off of Joseph Quinn and gets the
He
tourniquet
finishes the
through the
tourniquet. Yeah,
finishes the tourniquet, and then while they're in the middle of trying to get the tourniquets affixed to Elliot, Elliot comes back
oh,
alive. He's alive, and he wakes up, and as soon as he wakes up, now he's screaming too, because it's like,
yeah,
"Oh my," like, he's just
yeah.
like
It's just,
yeah,
oh, yeah. And
yeah,
he is like, I mean, and it was interesting because he's more of the tough guy, but
yeah.
I mean, he is. It was interesting to see. It was very different how they were screaming. Elliot and then Joseph Quinn, they were doing it very differently, but you know, it was horrible for both of them.
Yeah,
Like, it
there's
was
this
just,
wild they're both asking for morphine, and there's this
yeah,
oh my gosh, this moment I was like, "You gotta be kidding me," and especially if this really happened, I was like, "Oh my goodness." I've never ever
I
seen anything
couldn't.
like this in a war movie
Oh,
where
yeah, that was crazy.
Gandolfini pulls out a morphine shot and goes to put it in Elliot, and he puts it in upside down, and the needle goes into
Yeah,
his
into his,
thumb. And I just was like, "Oh, no," because then it's like one of your only able-bodied guys that you have now is gonna be, like, all
yeah,
morphined out. He's gonna,
yeah,
like which, like, and you can kinda see him be like, "Uh-oh, uh-oh,
yeah,
I just shot myself," which, like, the amount of morphine they're giving people who have shrapnel wounds is enough that if you're just if but I imagine that there's enough adrenaline pumping through your body that even if you were all morphined out, you could still be like, "Okay, I'm gonna push through it." Like,
Yeah.
it's gonna
Yeah.
be kinda like working while I'm drunk or something, but
Yeah.
there's enough going on that I'm
Yeah.
not gonna fall asleep. Like, I'll stay awake.
Yeah.
But
They don't.
it just complicates the situation. It's just like, "Oh, no." Like,
Yeah, because then he's like he gets another one, they give them the morphine. Yeah, that was crazy though, and you can see it in his thumb, and it's just like, "How did you do that?"
I
Like,
know,
that
it's just one of
so
those
it's
moments
one
where
of
you're
those things
like,
that it's like, that's so crazy that that must have happened. Like,
yeah.
that had to have
Well,
happened.
and it's like, I don't know if you've ever seen those things like
Yeah, yeah.
EpiPens or
EpiPens.
like, I can see how in a very heightened situation, you
Yeah,
could
yeah.
do that upside down, and if you have your thumb over it, like, I could totally see how that could happen, and it's just like, "Oh, no, I just
Yeah.
shot," but so they give these guys the morphine, and then the guys are going like, "It's not enough," but there's
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
this stuff that continues happening because, like,
Yeah.
they're now down on the lower deck, and, they're still getting shot at from all different directions. There there's these prolonged sequences in this movie too, where we get a break from, like, the screaming and the noise and the
Yeah.
craziness, and we go to a bird's eye view of what's being seen from drones.
Yeah.
And while they're on the comms and trying to communicate, the comms are showing them where the, kind of enemies are around them and what they're
Yeah.
seeing and who's converging on their position. But we're watching all of this, and we're even watching, like, the other platoon move toward their position,
Yeah.
and we get to, like, watch that happen from a bird's eye view. And I thought this was, like, really cool too, to just kind of
Mhm.
go, these are the multiple vantage points of what is actually being seen in a
Yeah.
modern battle
Yeah.
scene
Yeah.
sequence. And
Yeah.
and also that those moments were important too because it gave us like an auditory break from the
Yeah.
screaming and the
Mhm.
gunfire and you know but they're calling in backup. They're saying, okay, we need two more cars because we've got two heavily wounded. And that was
Yeah.
another thing is they go heavily wounded, and then Joseph Quinn goes, "Who do you mean when you say heavily wounded? Are you talking about me?
Yeah.
Are you talking
Yeah.
about me?" And he goes, "No, no, we're not talking about you, buddy." But it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
of course we're talking about you.
Of
Like,
course, your legs are blown off. Yeah.
yeah, which we're just seeing all of these guys
Yeah.
suffering lifelong trauma. But
Yeah.
they do this thing that I didn't even know this was a military maneuver, and this is crazy. They call in this thing several times. It's called a show of force,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
these like F-15 jets will fly really low down a street, and the force of the jets is,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's basically like an intimidation,
Yeah.
but it blows dust everywhere, and it's incredibly loud.
Yeah.
And Will Poulter, who's got a concussion, every time these show of forces come in, it's just like I just kept thinking, imagine having the worst headache of your life, and you're also in charge of a group of people who are in like
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
and then you have to call in a show of force and try to, like, cover your ears, and it
Yeah.
hits so hard that it just makes you like, his head's probably hurting so bad he wants to throw up,
Oh,
and,
yeah. Yeah.
and he's also gotta, like, somehow keep his wits about him
Yeah.
until the backup platoon gets there.
Yeah.
Um,
And the backup platoon does show up, real quickly. I felt like this was almost like the midpoint, like
yeah,
somebody came, but it's really not happening at the midpoint. But they come in, and the leader there, I think he's a sergeant, right? He's in there. I can't remember what his name is and who the actor is. But he comes in, and Will Poulter tells him, he's like, "Dude, those bombs messed me up. Like, I need
yep.
you to take over." And I thought that was really cool. Like, okay, like I mean, a good leader can tell you when he's not really fit for what he's doing. So this other sergeant comes in, and he takes over, and he like tells everybody what to do. They go back up on the second floor, and they start like shooting just to try and get some cover, and try to send them back just a little bit. And then at this point, they're asking for more, for two tanks, and they're saying no. And then they ask for two tanks again, and the guy says, "No, we can't. It's too dangerous." The guy on the radio says it's too dangerous. We need a CO approval. And I thought this was, I really liked this part because the sergeant says, he's like, "All right." He tells the comms guy, "You have to pretend to be the CO, and you have to order them to come in." And I was like, "Oh man, I don't know, like, did that guy get court-martialed for that? Like, can you do that? Like, what? It was a very, very interesting thing that they never talk about. The radio guy goes over, and you can tell, like, it's kind of like, should I do this? Should I not? Like,
And again, everything's happening so fast in
yeah.
this movie. Like the pace of this film is just
Yeah.
unrelenting.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just everything's happening so fast. And that is a big moment. But again, the fact that
Yeah.
like this is based on their memories that hey, they denied us
Yeah.
these tanks, and the only way we could get out of there is to just say, hey, I'm the CEO, send in the tanks, you know?
Yeah.
And then they do send in the tanks and they kind of do it by they have to do another show of force, but they're also doing things like they said that when the new platoon gets in, they send some guys upstairs to try to clear out some of the
Yeah.
upper
Yeah.
decks because there are, you know, they're as they call them bad guys or
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
Taliban on whatever on these various rooftops. And you know I thought that these firefights were incredibly intense too, that they
Oh,
have
yeah.
out on the balconies because it's literally it's stuff that you've seen in movies a million times where guys are sort of shooting and then going down and then
Yeah.
the other side shoots. But it's like I was thinking about like being a kid and going paintballing and how you'll like
Yeah.
poke
Yeah.
your head out and like pop, 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 and then pop back. But I'm like, imagine doing that
Yeah.
with
Real
you know
guns.
with machine gun like with machine gun fire
Yeah.
and having the guts to, like, pop up and, like, you know, and
Yeah.
go down, and these guys have big old guns that they're shooting, but it
Yeah.
doesn't even feel like anything's even necessarily being accomplished,
Yeah. Yeah.
and at one point before the tanks even get there, they send guys out to get gear out of the street, and again, we go back to the
Yeah.
gear, and the
Yep.
one of the big pieces of gear that's in the street is the sledgehammer from the inciting incident, and they're like, "We gotta
Yes.
send some guys out, we gotta clear out all of our gear out of the street," and it seems like it's a big priority for the United States military to not leave any of their material, any of their tools
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a battle zone, and what was so interesting and this is the question that my brother asked me that I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you, is
Yeah.
like, he noticed that when they sent guys out there, once they had the extra backup and they went out there and they were, you know, they're doing this stuff where they're all like taking shots at the rooftops and they've got the upper deck secured by guys up on the balcony.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get this sledgehammer back, but they're leaving like body parts. There's like
Yeah. Uh-huh.
legs and stuff in the
Yeah.
street. And he was kind of noticing like that the tools were almost more important than recovering the body parts. And also, and
Yeah.
again, I think that there's that metaphor of like the the
Yeah.
distinction being made between like does the military see a distinction between an expensive piece of machinery like a machine gun
Mhm.
or you know a computer and a soldier, or
It's interesting.
does
Yeah.
it see them both as like assets that have a dollar value assigned to them, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Yeah, and that I think my thought, because I noticed that that they keep running past the leg.
mhm,
It's very prominent. I thought that was the interpreter's leg, which
yeah.
I think it's a really good point. But I also wonder, like, okay, that guy is dead. Do they? I mean, but it goes into what they're saying, like that. That's not important to them. That's not their soldier. That's not their piece of
Well, and
property. That's not their anything. So yeah, it definitely is saying something.
I don't know if you remember when we finally did pull out of Iraq during the Biden administration, how there
Right.
was a big controversy over interpreters who were sort of left behind in the new
Yes.
Taliban,
Yeah.
and that like a lot of soldiers were saying like, we want to get those
Yeah.
guys were
Yeah.
part of our platoon. You know,
Uh-huh.
those guys like fought next to us, and we want to get we promised those guys we would take care of them, and
Yeah.
that's still a huge problem in the collateral hangover of this
Yeah.
war that we were a part of for 20 years is we left a lot of people back there who helped out our military, who were
Yeah.
interpreters for our military. And I think that this film is definitely, I mean, with them running by those body parts back and forth in the street, it really feels like, again, visual storytelling, something that's being said
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
overtly saying it. I think
Yeah.
that it's in there. Um, but yeah, we're running, I think basically, yeah, we're in probably when they get this sledgehammer, we're in the final act of this film, which
Yeah,
yeah,
I think because the the
yeah.
the the tanks are coming and the
Mhm.
sergeant says, "You need to light up the 2nd floor
Yep.
of all the buildings. You need to light them up." And they're like, "Are you
This
sure?"
this
Like,
sequence is crazy. Yeah, the
"Oh, this
tanks
sequence
get
is
in there
crazy."
and they go, "Just take your tank guns that shoot crazy
Yeah.
tank rounds and just level the upper decks of all of the buildings in this neighborhood."
Yeah.
And
They're
yeah,
going around and they're just shooting all the upper decks, and it's just doo, 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 doo. And again, the sound is amazing. I mean, it's loud and it's just like,
yeah.
oh, it's jarring. But they just light up the whole upper decks, and then they have a show, and they say this. I think it's Will Poulter. I can't remember who says it, but he says they're going to light up the second floor. Then we're going to do a show of force, and we're going to go.
Yep.
So they do that. They light up the second floor. They do a show of force to kind of cover them, and they all go outside.
Yep.
And actually, I really loved this part too, because right before they go outside, Will Poulter's trying to keep everybody. He's trying to keep the Iraqi family down.
Mhm.
He's trying to keep them down and just calm. And the dad is yelling at them, like
Mhm.
yelling at him,
Of
and he's
course.
pushing him down. Yeah, of course. He
Yeah.
pushes him down, and then he has to go, and he's just like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And he just leaves, which
Yeah, this is so crazy that they just
oh,
leave.
yeah,
Yeah,
they
I
just
mean, yeah,
they just leave him there. And I mean, what else are you gonna do? But you can tell
sure.
that he has remorse, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's a very it's got to be a hard thing to do. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he has done.
Again, I
Right.
have a hard time believing that Ray Mendoza doesn't have some kind of
Exactly. Yeah.
feeling about
Oh
this
yeah.
and about, like, the people whose home that was.
Yeah.
As the co-director and co-writer of this film, I
Oh
have a
yeah.
hard time believing that he doesn't have some that because it does feel it's just like what's
Yeah.
done to those people that it's just
Yeah.
like they're in the middle of the night, their house is taken over by foreign insurgents,
Yeah.
and then their home is decimated.
Yeah.
And yeah, the soldiers go out, the tanks drop their doors, everybody gets into also,
Yeah.
we forgot to mention that earlier in the film, there was uh we were picking somebody up and because we got our wounded guys into some tanks and Mendoza
Yeah.
was putting them into the tanks and he didn't get out in time.
Yes,
And
he
he
didn't.
gets up.
Right.
So some of the soldiers get left behind and we get some our wounded guys out. We get Elliot out and we get
Yeah.
Joseph Quinn out.
Which they have to put them on rugs. Well,
Yeah.
they
Oh yeah, we
put
forgot about
Elliot
that whole sequence.
they
Yeah.
put Elliot on a rug, so they turn him over, and he's screaming, just
Yeah.
but he's screaming, and then they turn him over the other side, and they get the rug, but they carry out Joseph Quinn, which I thought that was interesting. They don't go
Yeah.
into why,
Yeah.
but
Maybe it's
I mean,
there
I
was
guess
just one rug and Elliot's legs are way worse off than Joseph
yeah,
Quinn.
more severe. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like anyway, they have to lift him up, and they are just screaming the entire time, which oof.
Yeah,
But yeah,
both
they get those
Elliot
two out.
yeah, yeah. They get both those guys in tanks, and Mendoza gets stuck. So I also thought this is interesting that if we're relying mostly on Mendoza's memories, then everything from
Yeah.
here on out, I wonder if he just had to talk to the remaining
Yeah, that's
guys,
what I would imagine. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But it is I mean, they do all finally wind up getting out. They call they pretend to be a CO, they call
Yeah.
tanks back in, and they all get in the back of the tanks while shooting the whole way that they're running out, into the street and they're
Yeah.
shooting
Yeah.
at the rooftops and they all get in the backs of the tanks and it's very intense. And then the
Yeah.
tanks roll out and we just have this the
Yeah.
family just sort of the family whose house it is, they just
Yep.
walk out into their living room and just
Yeah.
sort of like look around at their house.
Well, and the dad is like, "Come out. It's okay. Come out." Like he's
Yeah.
like, "It's done. It's over." And they're like, "What do you mean? Like what?" And but he's just looking at all the destruction.
Yeah,
It's
the upper floor is gone.
yeah.
That's completely destroyed. Their house is completely destroyed. There's blood everywhere.
Yep.
And these soldiers just like and that's why I say it bookends the movie because the first shot is it's
Yeah.
silence in the middle of the night and the soldiers just sort of roll in and we're dropped into it. And the last thing we see is our soldiers roll out, they drive away, and then all of the I don't know, Taliban guys
Yeah.
or the Iraqi
Yeah.
they all sort of like slowly walk out of the houses that they were in and they
Yeah.
all just kind of look around like I
And they
guess
just
that's
yeah, they
it.
just walk around, and then it just cuts to black.
And that's it.
That's it. And then you see pictures
Yeah.
of all the people. Some of their faces are blurred out.
It says for
But some of them,
Elliot.
yeah, it says for Elliot. And then
Yeah.
you see kind of the real Elliot show up on set, and he's in a wheelchair. And then you see pictures of all the soldiers. And like I said, some of their faces are blurred out, some of them are normal, but
What
it's
was your
kind of
take on that? Do you think that they asked these guys if and some of them just said, "No, thanks, I don't wanna be
yeah.
involved," like
I wondered if it was that or if they're still active, like,
yeah?
but maybe they're still, enlisted or
Or could
whatever.
some
Because
of them maybe have died since? Or, I
possibly,
yeah, I don't
possibly.
know.
They showed one guy, it looked like he was a consultant, and his face was blurred because he's like doing military
Yeah, he
moves.
was on set working
Yes.
with the guys on set, and
And
his face was blurred, so it's like
yeah,
he's
I
obviously
thought
working.
like, yeah,
Yeah,
I was like, he's probably still active, whatever he's doing. He didn't want to see it, but they either said, no, I don't want to do that, but I'll give you my, who knows what it is, why, But I did think it was interesting. They still showed the picture, even though it was a blurred face. But it was, to me, it was just like, this was a real person, and this
Mhm.
guy played him. You can't see him, but that's who he was. Like it is a real picture. So I liked it. I thought
I
it gave it even more of a grounded feel, and like, wow, it's
I
kind
think
of
one of the
crazy.
craziest things about this story is that everybody made it out, that all of the American soldiers made it out alive. I
Yeah,
think that, if there's any element of this that's maybe like a rah-rah propaganda, go American military thing, it's
yeah,
showing how efficient and effective the
yes,
American military has become
yeah,
at protecting their own.
yeah,
In like, there's a reason why the death toll is so uneven in the Iraq war, that like it's like, the numbers that we took, the casualties that we took, pale in comparison to the
right,
amount of Arab people whose lives were lost in that
yeah,
20-year war.
right,
And the sort of efficiency of the American military machine is
yeah,
definitely on display in this film. So I definitely, it's not like the accusations of the film being a propaganda movie about how cool the American military is are completely unfounded, because it
yeah,
definitely is like, yeah, these guys are incredibly efficient and
yeah,
incredibly good. Like, the whole movie, I kept thinking, surely some of these guys are gonna,
yeah. That's what I
like, I
thought
thought
too.
for sure Elliot was dead. I thought
Yep.
that new guy, like, in a typical movie, like, oh, the new guy who's nervous, maybe he's gonna die, or,
Yeah,
typical screenplay structure, they would set something up where, like, oh, the guy that didn't take the shot earlier, he's gonna die. The guy that
yeah,
he didn't
yeah,
shoot's gonna kill him, like Saving Private Ryan
yep,
style. Like, it's
yep,
gonna come back to, but like, they all make it out of there. The
yeah,
interpreters don't. And I think that kind of, again, the message that you're left with is like, at the end of the day, the people who suffer the worst are just these sort of the people whose neighborhood this was,
yeah,
like,
yeah, right,
yeah, yeah. And it's just
yeah.
like,
It is, yeah, it is I mean, once the movie was over, and this definitely seems like a movie that is saying that war is hell, right? And
oh,
actually,
sure.
I forgot to say this, but even there are drapes in the movie that you see constantly that are red,
Mhm,
and it gives everything a red tint. And
mhm.
I have no idea if this was intentional or not, but that's what kept coming to my head. Is there's like red drapes, and they're like, it looks all red. Like, are they saying that war is hell? Like, this is hell. They are in hell right now, And I mean, I don't know if that was intentional, not. Maybe that's just what they remembered, and that's what it was. But that's what kept coming to my mind. Um,
Sure. I mean, it definitely doesn't seem like a pleasant place to be
no,
where they
no,
were for the duration of that movie. And again, this is like a 90-minute movie. This is
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's the pace is unrelenting from the moment that that grenade goes in through that hole. It is foot on the gas. And even when the movie ended, I thought, wow, like that just
yeah.
blew by. It felt
It
like the
did.
movie was maybe like an hour long, because it
Yeah,
just
it's
was,
quick.
yeah, was moving so fast. Um, yeah, but overall, I found this movie, like you said, to be very effective and, kind
Yes.
of technically mesmerizing and
Mhm.
completely engrossing. I was completely just engaged the entire time, and there's a lot to think about.
Yes.
Because it's not so prescriptive, because it's not, um, trying to force feed you a moral or
Yeah.
uh, an
Yes.
idea. There's a lot to just sort of chew on about what you've just witnessed, and
Yeah.
it sort of allows you to draw your own conclusion, which is, again, how I felt
Yeah.
about the movie Civil War.
Yeah.
But let's get into our scores
Let's do it.
for this. If this is your first time watching our show, we do scores out of 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst. We give a technical rating. That's just for how well the movie was constructed at a technical level, the craft of the film. We do a rating for the ending, how well we feel like the movie stuck the landing. We do a rating for rewatchability, a rating for cultural significance or relevance, the cultural impact of the film, and a subjective score. So, Kramer, for Warfare, what is your technical rating?
My technical rating, I'm giving a 9. This movie was, uh, just technically amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I thinking of trying to make a war film and how you have to keep track of everything, how you film it to make it look like it's real. Everything in this felt very, very real. And it was, so the way that they shot it, the cinematography in it was all very, very top notch. And then, I mean, the production design, everything, all the technical aspects, and then really the sound design and the sound mixing and everything was just so good. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I should give it a 10, but I mean, it really was amazingly well constructed and done. And it's not really a linear, or it's not really the traditional structure, but it has everything in there. It has beginning, middle, and end, and you get to where you need to go. It's a very simple form of an arc, but that's in no way is that a negative.
Yeah, I gave this a 9.5, and I
Yeah.
think that I love the book ending of that opening shot
Yeah.
and the end, the way that it sort of opens with like stillness and quiet,
Yeah.
and I mean after the prologue, I mean, and ends with just sort of like the stillness of the
Yeah.
end of the chaos. That it's got this big storm in the middle. I also just think about like the execution of an idea, and it
Yes.
feels like the exact movie that Ray Mendoza and Alex Garland wanted to make, they made. They
Yeah.
executed their concept perfectly in my mind. It's
Yeah.
like the exact experience that they were going for, whether you like it subjectively or not, whether the structure of this film works for you on a subjective level or not, they made the movie they set out to make. It's not like it's not like Tombstone where it's like, okay, this movie sort of got chopped up in the edit and maybe
Yeah.
this isn't the movie that they set out to make, but do you like the movie that wound
Yeah.
up getting made anyway? It's like this is the exact movie I think that they set out to make. I think they
Yeah.
executed
Yeah.
their idea really, really well. So
Yeah.
9.5 from me. And again, could be a 10.
Yeah.
Maybe it should be a 10.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Uh, I'm not sure what they could have done better. The ending, what'd you give
No.
the ending?
Yeah, maybe it should be a 10. I don't
Maybe it
know.
should be a 10. I'm gonna say 10.
I'm
I
gonna
don't know
go
what
10 too.
I don't
Honestly,
know
it
what they
should be
could
a
have done
10.
better.
I know, it really, it's
10s.
exactly, I mean, if anything, some of the acting a little bit, but it's still the acting, I thought it felt very realistic. So
Yeah.
yeah, it deserves a 10. It does.
Yeah.
We've changed our scores. That's what it
Uh,
is. Take it or
It
leave it.
feels like you always gotta, like, leave a
I know.
space for, like,
Yeah.
the best mo but I'm like, we're just talking about the technical
Technical. Yep.
execution,
And that
and
really does deserve a 10. Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
the
Okay.
ending.
The ending, I gave a 9.
Mhm.
The only reason I take it off is because it's like it comes really quick. And it just ends. They get in the tanks and they're done and everybody's like giving thumbs up and everything. But I give it a 9 because it fits so perfectly for the movie.
Mhm.
They get out. That's it. They're done. And then like you said, the bookend is pretty brilliant. Like,
Yeah.
so I gave it a 9.
They roll in, they roll out.
Yep.
And everything in that the movie is everything that happens in between. I gave
Yep.
the ending a 9 as well. I felt like it was just a very strong ending. I've seen people criticize the ending of this movie. I've seen people say
Interesting.
it just
Yep.
sort of ends in the middle of the film, but the rest
that's
and
the
I'm like, "No, it doesn't." Like, that's the movie.
that's
Like
the end.
like
Yeah.
the mission they got out. Like,
Yeah.
they
I
got
mean, that's
everybody.
what they're building to. They are
Yeah.
building to getting out of that area in tanks.
I
So,
think that people are just used to some kind of
yeah,
denouement. They're used
yeah,
to some kind of falling action where we see them reuniting with family members, or
right.
something like where we see the cost afterward. Like we would go home and see Elliot with his leg gone, and like
Yeah,
we would.
yeah.
But it's like that's not this movie. That's not
No,
what this movie is. This is the right ending for this movie, in my opinion.
exactly. Exactly.
And so rewatchability for this film.
Okay, rewatchability. I gave it a 3.
Okay.
Now, the reason being, I loved this movie and it is done so well. I don't know if I really want to watch it again.
Yeah.
I mean, it is so traumatic, and just like you said, like, you see the trauma, which is, it's a great movie, it's done so well, but I'm not too interested in, like, revisiting this and
Sure.
rewatching it and watching it every year at, on July 4th or whatever. It's like, it's a hard movie to watch. There are some movies that I love, but I don't ever wanna see them again because I'm glad I saw it. It's kind of like, Requiem for a Dream, like, that movie is amazing. I don't ever really wanna see it again, but
Sure.
so this is kind of in that category. Now, that's not gonna be for everybody. This is my personal score for rewatchability because I don't want I'm fine if I don't see this movie again. I could watch it for sure, and I would have a good experience, but I don't really care too much to see it again.
My rewatchability score is still high because there's a handful of war movies that I will revisit over like I've seen
Nice.
Saving Private Ryan
Oh yeah,
probably
yeah.
6 or 7 times in
Oh,
my
I
life.
love that movie. Yeah.
And again, these are all films that can be hard to watch for various reasons.
Yes.
And like I said, that this is a well-worn genre. There's a lot of different movies in this genre. This movie jumped into easily my top 10 of this genre that I've ever seen.
Nice.
I like the
Nice.
uniqueness of this film. I like that it's doing something that I haven't necessarily seen. I know that, like I mentioned those films that have tried something like this before, but I don't think that they've done it this well. I think that
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
and
I
I
agree.
think when it comes to if I'm in the mood to put on a war epic, this
Yeah.
would be one that I would be willing to put, especially
Okay. Cool.
if thinking of showing a movie to someone like that's interested in movies about war. This
Yeah.
is one that I would be willing to go to. So it's
Yeah.
still high on my list. How about the cultural
Yeah.
impact
Wait,
of this film? What do you
what did
think?
you get? What did you give rewatchability? What was the actual
I give it
score?
an 8.
Oh, you gave it an 8. Okay,
8.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I could rewatch it. I don't know, 3. Anyway. Okay, cultural impact. The cultural impact, I've given it a 7. Actually, I should give it an 8 because I think it will have an impact. I think
Yeah.
this is a movie everybody who's seeing it, it's not doing like amazingly at the box office, but I think it's doing what they expected and it's doing well. But I do think that this is a movie that they're going to reference, and I think this is also a type of movie that can have a real impact on future filmmakers.
Yeah.
So,
I gave this movie a 7 because I don't know.
yeah.
Like you said, we're just in such a weird era where like people just don't go see things, and so but I can definitely see. I would like to see this referenced in as
Yeah.
the years pass as like a great war film
Yeah.
that ages well and that continues to be noticed for different little details in the
Yeah.
visual filmmaking, and I could see it in time becoming one of the great war films like an Apocalypse Now or
Yeah.
Full Metal Jacket or because I see those elements in here and
Yeah.
yeah I hope that it does have a
Yeah.
lasting cultural impact. So I gave
Yes.
it a 7. And how about subjective score?
My subjective score, I gave it a 9. Love this movie. I thought everything we talked about, I think, speaks for itself. It's a really really great movie. Go see this in the theater for that experience, and to get that feeling at the absolute most that it can be, and that's going to a theater and seeing it. So I think everybody should go see it.
I'm right there with you. I am at a 9 with this movie. I really, really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I do think that Alex Garland makes these kinds of films in a way that's
yeah,
open to your own personal political leanings. If you want to see it as
yeah,
a, tear-jerking patriotic testament to the power of American
yeah,
exceptionalism, I guess you could see it as that. If you want to see it more as a thing that's critiquing the American war machine and the way that it can sort of commodify lives
yeah,
and boil lives down to a number on a sheet and assign a dollar value to lives. But because what I see in the movie, that the heart of the film is the brotherhood amongst the men, that it's like
yeah.
regardless of what the American military industrial complex thinks
Mhm.
of them, they think of each other
Yeah.
highly, and they
Yes.
care about each
Yeah.
other, and that's what comes through in the film to me is the
Yeah.
human to human connection.
Yeah.
And you can see that in the filmmaking, in my opinion, that they also do care about what's happening to these other people, but they're just sort of trained to prioritize each other first.
Right.
And it's an interest, the way that war kind of gives you these black and white dichotomies of
Yeah.
good guys and bad guys and stuff. But I really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah.
Let us know if you saw this movie, what your take is on the politics of the film, what
Yeah.
your take is in general on the structure, the atypical structure of the film. We're going to start letting you in on what we're going to be doing in advance so that you can watch along with us for the
Yeah.
next episode. Next week, there's a new season of Andor coming out on Disney Plus. So we decided we were going to do a rewatch of Andor season 1. Might be a
Yes.
lot to watch, but if you want to kind of follow along and you want to follow along with the discussion for next week, we are going to be watching Andor season 1. So
Yes.
you can watch that, I believe, with a Hulu subscription or with a Disney Plus subscription,
Yeah.
or a bundle subscription there.
Yep.
And in preparation for Andor season 2, and we'll be kind of doing a breakdown of Andor season 1. So
Yeah.
uh,
It'll be an interesting one because we don't really see eye to eye on this one.
I
So
know a lot of
yeah.
times when we both like the movie, our scores are always very similar. But this
Yes.
is a series where like it's one of my favorite series ever, and you don't particularly like it. So we'll see how the
Yeah.
rewatch goes, and
Yeah.
we'll talk about why I like it and why maybe you don't still.
Yeah.
We'll see
That'd
what
be great.
happens.
I'm
But
excited.
yeah, that's what we'll be doing next week. So join us then, and like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we will see you next week.